Well, what kind of training did you go through? Did you go through regular Army training, I assume?
Yes. During our regular training in Peoria, Illinois, we kind of followed the routine of the ROTC. And of course, we were introduced to our units where we had to serve. And we was taught in the laundry company and the showers that when the soldiers would come off the line, they'd come back to us and get a shower and clean clothes and head back up.
Tell me about getting on a ship and sailing out to Europe.
It turns out that being born and raised in Cleveland Parish, Louisiana, I found that as a boy, I always moved around with my parent from place to place, and finally settled into Grambling, Louisiana, where my grandmother was. And of course, in Grambling, Louisiana, there was an elementary school, a high school, and a college. And it was very good for me to have an opportunity to go there because I could do my education. And
what college was that?
This was Grambling College at the time. It's Grambling State University at this time, yes.
Okay. Let's talk about your going to Europe and landing on Normandy Beach shortly after D-Day, I would imagine.
Yes. After taking part of my training in Peoria, Illinois, we were finally shipped to New York City, where we spent maybe about 3 or 4 days and nights. And of course, then we got on the ship, crossing the Atlantic into Europe. And that's where, we were preparing for D-Day. And of course, we finished our training in England. And of course, it was about 4 days after D-Day that our company crossed over into France.
And what did you see when you got on the beaches of Normandy?
The things that I saw when I finally crossed onto Normandy Beach was, in many cases, a lot of destruction, because prior to our going, of course, as many of you perhaps know from history, that there were many, many soldiers going before us. And of course, we had the paratroopers who dropped behind the line. So the Germans were between the troops coming forward and of course the paratroopers who had come down and was moving forward.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, let's stop there and let's talk to Mr. Etheridge. Mr.
All right.
Where were you from and where did you?
Jackson, Mississippi.
Were you enlisted or did you?
Drafted.
You were drafted. And what did you think about that?
I wanted to go. Everybody else was going.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So where did you go for training when at the beginning of World War II?
About 80 miles from here, Aberdeen Proving Ground.
Oh. And what were you doing up there?
Basically, learning the routine of the Army. Mm-hmm. And I was up there, and then it sent me always to the Campbell, California.
So you went west
Right.
for your training. And what kind of training did you receive there?
Unloading, loading ships.
Okay.
Stevedore.
Stevedore.
Right.
And what does that entail you doing? Are you down by the ports or are you?
Was on the port. See, the war was just over, and they was sending supplies back there for the Japanese and sending them back home.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you ever ship out into the Pacific?
No.
How many folks were in your unit? Do you recall?
About 42.
Yeah. From all over the country?
I guess so.
Yeah. What did you think about being in the Army?
It was a good thing. Everybody was going and they was advertising about the service and everything. So I didn't know any better, young, and I wanted to put on that uniform.
And what is the kind of message you got from serving your country? When you talk today about serving your country in World War II, what do you say?
I think it was a wonderful thing. You go in and serve your country, and you come back and you have some knowledge of the other kind of living.
And what did you do after the service?
Oh, I worked at a grocery store,
Good for you. And where are you living now?
Los Angeles.
Ah, so you stayed out west?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Let's turn over here to May. Tell them what a Rosie the Riveter is, May, in case they don't know.
Well, we weren't in the trenches, but we made everything that our fighting men needed to win the war. We're very proud of that. The women were neglected for many years for what we did to save our country. But we finally got the Congressional Gold Medal, which we're very proud of. But one thing I want to say as I sit here and look at all your military men and women, especially your young cadets, I just love what you have in store for you, your life ahead. When I go away from one of these affairs, it takes me 3 days to get over what I feel about you, how you make me feel so secure with the way our country's going now. I'm just so proud of all of you. Thank you for what you're doing.
What did you do as a Rosie the Riveter? What kind of factory or plant were you in?
I worked in Boeing in Seattle, Washington. I built B-17 bombers and B-29 bombers. During the Korean War, I worked a while too, but I forget what the bomber was. It was just a little fighter plane, so I'm not sure what that was. But the women did an outstanding job. I mean, I don't think for years they didn't realize that they couldn't have won the war without what the women did. And I think I'm so proud of what we have finally achieved. We've come a long way, other women. I mean, we took us years. I worked 40, 50 years to get our Congressional Gold Medal. I wasn't the only one. But I'm just so proud that when the ceremony was held in Washington, and it was held the 10th of June at Emancipation Hall, and I was the one that they chose to accept the medal for the millions of women that worked during World War II. One of the proudest moments of my life, and I will show it to you too. I want to show it to you.
Huh?
It was so special when it was given to you. You're not allowed to touch the original. This is original given to me by the congressman. You're not allowed to touch it. It goes right into the Smithsonian Museum. It's a nice thing, just so nice to be able to bring it with me and show you. I'm so proud of it. As women, I mean, there's not many of us left anymore, like our men too from World War II. But it's such a nice thing. I have a few things I'd like to say, but I wrote them down because this week with all the elections and going on and all that madness, my head's spinning. So that's just a few things I'd like to tell you. I said, you know, when World War II was declared, all the men, women, and children just went to work. It wasn't my job or your job, it was our job. We just banded together. There's never time in history that our country worked together as well as we did during that time to save our country. I'm just so very proud of that. I think that's so nice that you had that. And it was so amazing because when our young men left, as soon as Pearl Harbor was declared, our men just enlisted right and left. And of course, all the mothers and fathers, they banded together to do what was necessary. I remember when my father put my brother on the train, I found him crying. He was such a happy man. And I come home and found him crying, and I thought, this is happening all over America. Mothers and fathers are putting their children on the train, and so many of them never returned, which was a sad time in our lives. I thought that was sad, really sad. There's not a whole lot I can say. In fact, the best speeches were the shortest ones, so mine's short. It was nice because I don't know, I have here. I don't really know much more that I can say. I'm just here to promote the women of World War II. One thing I do now, the most important thing I do, I travel all over to promote women and young girls, especially young girls. They don't know their potential. In our day, women were the second-class citizens, more or less. And now you women, what you women have done, we've opened doors, but what you women have done is outstanding. We're just so proud of you. I think that's so great. I think what we've done for men and women, I said, we're not fighting for superiority, we want equality. And it's a long time coming. We still have a long way to go, ladies. Anyway, that's my speech. That's all I have to say. I'm just proud of the role that the women played.
Thank you. You did good.
Thank you.
Hold your thoughts. Let's go back over here. Reverend, you just went to D-Day this past June, I think.
Yes,
So
D-Day, yes.
Talk a little bit about that, what your experience was there.
It turns out that during D-Day this year, the foundation, which I was able to be a part of, and they took us back to Normandy, and the Frenchmen's children, young adults and all treated us with great respect and love. They are a very unique people, and they point out very clearly that they are truly in love with America, Americans, because of what we did during World War II in helping to save their country and many of their people. It was an experience that I had a chance to go back and see, let's say on my right, all of the tombstones of Americans. On my left were tombstones of Germans. And it's a mixed emotion when you find yourself there knowing that you too were shipped to Europe during that period, and God allowed me to go and get a small accident in the face, and I had an opportunity to return to America, whereas there were thousands and thousands of tombstones of 18-year-old and younger and older Americans who went to serve in Europe to help save our country as well as others who did not return. It was heartwarming on the part of the Frenchmen who did everything they could, it seems to me, to make our trip an enjoyable trip. And I was so thankful to know that those persons treated us quite well during the time of the war and during the time of D-Day. I felt that many of the things that they did, they didn't have to do during D-Day, but they did them for us because they showed their love in terms of what the Americans did, American soldiers did during World War II.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Joe, let me ask you a question. You were far away from home in World War II.
Right.
Were you able to communicate with the folks back home and that kind of thing?
Yeah, corresponding with mail,
Yeah?
and they always look for mail call. Want to hear from someone.
And did you get it?
Yes. So I enjoyed my trip in the service. I got a chance to see a lot.
Let me ask you another question. How was the chow?
Well, the job was rough.
The chow, what you had to eat?
Job, oh, that was rough. Sometimes you had sea radish and sometimes
Russia.
yeah, cold cuts. On Sunday, the mess hall wasn't open.
Really?
Yeah, you get cold cuts. But I made it.
You made it.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Yoho here, who every year has a message to give to the folks who come to this conference. And Dave, if you would, please.
If I would, please. This is the hardest part of the day.
I know.
Sitting down is easy, getting up's a chore. First of all, I want to thank everyone for attending today. I want to thank the Veterans Center. And these are my comrades that you see here. I ask a prayer and a blessing for who they are and what they've done. A little piece of history. December 7th, 1941, the Imperial Navy of Japan struck us at Pearl Harbor, and we were engrossed in World War II. World War II, we were a nation of 130 million people, and we put 16,400,000 in uniform. That may never happen again, but it will happen through your eyes and your heart and what you think, feel, and believe, and what you know about what happened. When that war ended almost 4 years later, it was August 15th, 1945, I remember it well. I was on a tanker refueling other ships, and we were in the vicinity of Okinawa, the last major invasion. And I wonder if you can remember this, the day they said the war had ended. 440,000 guys never came back.
Amen.
Over millions were endowed with a disease that couldn't even be recognized or identified. Post-traumatic stress disorder. We came home to a society that didn't understand us and we didn't understand them. And the people who were there to receive us, we had a history at the end of World War II of drunkenness, more alcoholics than ever before, more busted marriages, more spousal abuse, and more suicides. Now, if you were never a veteran, you may not know what I'm going to talk about. Because the very day, and I was only 15, I lied about my age, and I wasn't the only one, there were dozens like them. I enlisted in the Navy, and I was all set to go and everything, and they found out I had falsified my birth certificate. So when I came home that day from school, my parents were sitting there and the police were there. They had parked out front of our house. And my father was not too happy about all this. But I couldn't go away. But I didn't stop, and I learned about the United States Maritime Service, in which I served, in which they recruited 250,000. I'll tell you more about them in a minute. I don't see myself as a spokesman for Dave Yoho. I feel myself fortunate to be in the role of a spokesman for veterans all over the world. And I get invited all over the world. I've made over 5,000 speeches. I've been in 100 movies. I have been I've been invited to the White House 4 House and to Congress 3 times. And each time I get an opportunity to express what we are, what we did, but from your viewpoint, what you can do to satisfy this. We live in a turmoil and disconfusion. Now we got 350 million people. And we are living in a time of great change. Yeah. And so when I ask you to reflect on what we did and how we did it, we fought on 5 continents. We were an island, the United States of America. We didn't have Alaska and we didn't have Hawaii. They weren't states yet. There were 48 states. And we put this magnificent military together. The United States Merchant Marine exists in peacetime. It's the oldest service in the world. It started in the Revolutionary world, but it is essentially a civilian organization until wartime. 1938, there was the U.S. Maritime Service Law. They created the War Shipping Administration, and we, 250,000 of us, took the oath to do what we were supposed to do. Did it work out? We had the highest mortality rate of any of the services. 1 out of 26 of us paid the price. Now, no one representing the Academy today, the Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point. The way you graduated from Kings Point, you worked up to 6 months before you got your commission. You went to sea as a cadet. And then when you came back, you got your commission. But 154 of them never came back. We lost 1 out of 26. We had 609 imprisoned in Japanese prison camps. The aftermath of the war leaves you with a scar. We don't talk about the scars because we don't like the feeling that it gives us. Now I stand before you and it's my evocation. We live in the greatest country in the world, and damn it all, we set the pace for telling you it's worth it. Whatever we went through, it's worth it. Let me give you a couple of other hints that maybe you never heard. How many of you have ever heard of the second Pearl Harbor? It was in Barry, Italy. It was in December of '43. And in that particular case, 106 German, this is on the Adriatic of Italy, the Adriatic time, hit that harbor. There were 22 ships in that harbor, and all but 4 of those ships were sunk. And on one of those ships was 100,000 tons of mustard gas. Outlawed in after World War II, told it could never happen again, but they were on that ship. That port was in charge of the British, and the British general wanted to make sure that if the Germans used it, we used it. But here's the story. That ship anchored between 2 ships. Now, ordinarily, if you're in a harbor, the ship is parked athwartship, this way, to the dock. But with so many ships, they were lined up like this. And that ship, the Roberts, when that ship was hit, it disintegrated. It disintegrated. There was nothing left of that ship, taking the ships on either side of it down with us. And then the tragedy, no one wanted to admit that we had these bombs in the hold of a ship. And rightfully so, it wouldn't have been good for everyone. On that one day, 1,000, it lost 1,000 on that very day. And yet you never read this. It's available now. The book is called The Greatest Secret, and if you Google it, you people all have access to those little machines. You can find anything. Google it, Barry, Italy, 1943, and see what happened. 1,000 died, and thousands beyond that were sentenced to a life of lung deterioration and defoliation, because that's what mustard gas does, and that's why it was outlawed. The first convoy, the first major convoy, Russia was at one time our ally, and we had to get to Russia. We had to give them arms, we had to give them men, we had to give them clothing, we had to give them food. So the first convoy loaded in Reykjavik, Iceland. That's on the eastern seaboard. And that convoy was composed of 34 ships. Now, on each ship is a body of men that serve on that ship, officers and men of the United States Merchant Marine, and an average of 26 gunners were in the U.S. Navy. And we had to gun forward and gun aft. But now this convoy moves out and is escorted by 27 other ships. These were our protectors. These were the fast ones. A merchant ship, by the way, you heard about the Victory, it travels at 9 knots. That's 9 miles an hour. The ship I was on was a tanker that did 14 to 15. The speedier ships, the destroyers, the destroyer escorts, the cruisers, they can do 22, 23 knots. But 5 days out of Reykjavik, Iceland, where this convoy was headed, 5 days out, the Germans struck. They knew we were there because an admiral in the, this was a British admiral, Lord Pound, he decided to pull our combat patrols away from us. He took them away because in the Norway harbor was the greatest battleship in the world. The Tirpitz were owned by the Germans. There were 2 of them, Bismarck and Tirpitz. And the Tirpitz was in there. And they pulled away our military escortmen, took them. And 4 of those ships made it. 4. because when they drew the combat away, the Germans knew it immediately, and they pummeled us. Bering Sea. See if history gives you this. At the best part of the year, in the Bering Sea, the temperature is 45 degrees below zero. Now, you Navy men,
Will I be able to
you
say
know
a
what I'm
word
talking about.
afterwards?
I'll get to you later.
Just
Come back
before.
later. Whoever that was. So at this point, these men, and I lost my train of thought by goofing around, but I'll get it quickly. That part's still here.
2
So
minutes, Dave.
what happened is when those troops were withdrawn, an officer, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., was on an American Navy escort, the destroyer escort, a DE, very fast ship. And this is the message he left. I pity those poor bastards. You don't know about PQ-17? Look that one up. You don't know about, you don't know that women did not serve in the military in combat in World War II, except they leave out this fact, the Army nurse. Because the minute we secured a beach, we moved into that beach, and the first thing they had to produce then was a hospital. Now, we were taken back to the wonderful spirit of the American Airlines, took us back to France just recently. Some of the guys that were with us on that trip, we were all veterans, 63. 63 of us were accompanied by, we had to have a guardian. I chose my wife as my guardian, my wife of almost 50 years. And we went back, and the people in that area treated us like gods. Now,
Dave?
what happens next is
Dave?
this.
I think we're going to have to.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap up right now.
Thank you.
I want to leave a message for the cadets, you young people. On you, we lay the hands of our forebears and your forebears. We are excited about what you bring to what we do. We ask you to understand that everyone does not understand, but we lay at your hearts. Our flag is important, the symbols of our government is important, and you as individuals are important. I hope my message gets to even more of you. God bless the United States of America, and God bless American veterans and those who mourn them.
I'd like to make some more comments.
Hey,
Okay.
May has something to say.
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
I speak for women. I've traveled all over promoting women. What you don't realize is what these mothers and wives and children go through when the men are overseas fighting for us. The people don't realize sometimes how hard it is for them. There's not enough recognition out there for what the women and children go through, and I'm sure some of you have experienced that. And then when the men come home, there's quite an adjustment period. Another thing is these nurses that are overseas, they're in with bullets flying, they're in there saving lives, the nurses and doctors. They're not getting enough recognition. And it's all part of winning this war, winning our world. We've got to put more notoriety out there for the people that are left behind. And I think that these families really deserve more recognition.
Thank you, May. Thank you very much. Sir?
Yes. First of all, I want to give thanks to the Best Defense Foundation for having to give me the opportunity to go back to D-Day. And I also want to say thanks to Elma, who is my administrative assistant. One of the things that really hit me real hard when I saw the tombstones and all, it came into my mind and thinking, being as I am now 100 years old, I gave thanks and I started thinking about one of the great hymns of which I learned when I was a boy, and that's Amazing Grace. And I began to sing that song during that period, Amazing Grace.
Lovely.
Yes.
Lovely.